Good morning, folks, and here's an article from Wired.com on how not to be a critic. In fact, the entire concept of being a critic is attacked here, not to mention other people who have differing opinions than this author, whose name is Swapna Krishna. I'm assuming that's an Indian name. Could be made up. I have no idea who these people are. Anyway, stop complaining about Mass Effect Andromeda. Once you stop comparing it to the original trilogy, it's actually pretty good. If you have no experience and no sense of taste and no understanding of what makes a game or a game good or a third-person action-adventure experience good, then this bottle of vinegar is a fantastic bottle of wine. This movie I've never seen before is a fantastic thing. There's all kinds of dumb things we can do when you eliminate sense, taste, and experience. Everyone's a critic. Everyone can be an amazing critic. This thing I've never experienced before is stimulating my senses. What an amazing sensation. No concept of what makes the thing good or bad. No idea of the history of something. Forget all the dozens, if not hundreds of other third-person shooters out there to compare it to. Clearly, this monolith, this completely original thing has come into our lives, and everything about it is unique, and we have nothing to compare it to. Everything's great. It's like, no, that's not how this works. Let's get into the article. Looking back, it's easy to understand the ire, but frankly, the disappointment had everything to do with what legions of button mashers wanted, and nothing to do with whether or not the game's developers succeeded in making the game they wanted to make. So already we have a very strange take on criticism. For one, I don't even know why they had to do this, but they started attacking the people who dislike the title as button mashers. So we're poisoning the well, we're attacking the other group of, the people they disagree with as button mashers. I don't see that as a very effective way of starting off your analysis. It has nothing to do with the philosophy of why something is good or bad. You're just attacking people. Secondly, they're describing the whole quality, or at least so far, of the thing as whether or not the intention of the game developers succeeded in making the game they wanted to make. That's okay. It's like I intend to make a chocolate cake, and I use chocolate and I use sugar and milk and cream and flour and yada yada. I make a cake. Well, that's fine. You made a chocolate cake, but is it any good? You see, there's a difference between I'm going to do the thing I'm going to do and the thing I actually did, is it any good within the category of, let's say, chocolate cake? So that is certainly an aspect of creating a thing that the means of creation was, had a goal, had a plan. And we were talking about Andromeda. Holy crap, their plans suck. Their development cycle, their production value sucked. And it shows. And anyone who's a critic, who's played video games and seen how long they take to make, and BioWare's so wonderful reputation for coming out with quality products in the last 10 years or whatever, shows. And if you disregard all that, it's a great thing. Everything's great. There were absolutely legitimate complaints. Andromeda was a buggy as hell when it came out, which made it hard to enjoy, but the central argument against it seemed to be that Mass Effect Andromeda was bad because it wasn't what people expected. That was part of the problem, but that's because we're expecting a form of quality product like the franchise it is a part of. It is not to be divorced from the franchise it is named after. That is the problem. That is, you have expectations to live up to. If Mercedes produces a shit car, people are going to go, what the hell, Mercedes? You have decades of experience of quality. Why does your car suck? Why does this iteration suck? And it could be on the littlest thing. It could be on the dashboard. It could be on the size of the wheels or whatever. Something is totally off. It's not it doesn't drive like a Mercedes. And it shows very quickly to people who know Mercedes. The same thing for people who know Mass Effect. They look at Andromeda. They don't even have to play it. They can just look at it and go, this is not the same thing, for multiple reasons. Fan reaction to the game was so universally bad, BioWare canceled its plans. Frustrations mounted, gamers griped, or just gave up. So it seems as if the general populace say, this is a piece of shit. Everyone knows it. Reviewers know it. Casual gamers know it. The game crashes. The game has bugs like up the wazoo. Yeah, we all know it. Versions of this scenario have played out dozens of times, and not just in gaming. With someone, a movie franchise, a brand, a young adult trilogy is beloved. Fans always clamor for more, but they often do it with preconceived notions of what exactly more looks like, and generally that translates to more of the same. And that's true. That's what you expect. When you go to a steakhouse, you expect a steak. When you go to McDonald's, you expect the same quality of Big Mac that you had, I don't know, maybe a decade or two ago. It's called consistency. That's why people go back to places. That's why people read the same books from the same author in the same series. It's expected to be better, or if not, the same quality. It's a sequel. And if you're doing something more original, you have a bit more leeway to the story and the characters and the setting, of course. Especially when you're in outer space and you're in a whole new galaxy, you expect something different, sure, but not in the quality of experience, in the setting, in the what you expect the alien worlds would be like, as you would expect any alien world. I don't know why they had to go to another galaxy to prove that. That seems a little extreme, but do what you want. It's natural to want additional time with favorite characters or dance to a familiar beat. But lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place. Twice the creators can't help but grow. What? It's natural to want additional time with favorite characters to dance to a familiar beat, but lightning doesn't strike in the same place twice, and creators can't help but grow and change. This is not an issue of the developer or artist or producer or whoever's on the team to be like, whoa, we got to do something completely original. We got to push the boundaries of what Mass Effect is. That's not the case here. This is a case of people waking up going, we can't do the thing we wanted to do. We don't have the time or technology or knowledge to do procedurally generated planets or whatever. They had to hire people to do the car scenes for explorations in the levels with the Nomad. And that's fine. They knew their limitations. Like, we got to spend money over here. Great. But they took too much time in research and development and came up with nothing. They blew that money. All the research did not amount to any product. Sometimes that happens. It's like, okay, we got to eat that cost. We got to come up with something new. We can't use procedurally generated whatever. Do something else. And they did. It took a long amount of time and produced nothing special. Semaphore albums, Star Wars prequels, Andromeda, these things all fall victim to the inability of anything to repeat the past when it was fresh and new. If we're making the argument that Empire Strikes Back of Star Wars was new, you're right. The difference was the newness of it was still familiar and of a higher quality than what was expected. You were like, whoa, this is not your typical Star Wars. What's going on? We wanted like lightsaber battles and spaceship battles. Oh, wait, those were actually there. You just had a focus of the plot be in different areas with different characters. Things being nuanced. That's fine. Those things, those as presented as elements of a story, were still of a certain quality. In Andromeda, you didn't have that. You had generic quest lines of poorly designed quests, poorly designed levels, and horrifically implemented visuals. Animations, dialogue, you name it. The dialogue in the story throughout all the story, not just the quests. The main story, the companion conversations were crap. You could say they were nuanced, you could say they had some character, but they were pointless. They had nothing to do with the main plot, very little to do with the main characters, And what there were of those characters weren't that interesting. Like, oh, I don't know, Cora, Jaal, Liam, PB. Some people like Drax and Vetra, I guess. But all these characters were cardboard cutouts of something we've already seen. There wasn't much depth to them, and they weren't that interesting. Their attempts at comedy and romance were pathetic. There's a difference between finding a piece of entertainment personally disappointing and it being objectively bad. I agree. Andromeda was objectively bad. I'm glad this person is addressing the fact there's something called objectively good or bad. Thank you. Andromeda was that. Now, explain to me how Andromeda was good. I'd like to hear that too. It's okay to decide something isn't what you wanted and therefore isn't for you. That's the argument of, well, it's good, or it's an excellent piece of art or media, but it's just not my cup of tea. It's not to my tastes. So someone's tastes are focused on one thing, let's say open world adventure games. If you're that kind of video gamer, there's all kinds of games like that. There's all kinds of online games. And then you play a game like Andromeda, you're like, well, this isn't really open world. The levels are big, yeah, but it's nothing like an open world sci-fi experience. So you can make that assessment because your tastes aren't perfectly aligned. You know the genre, you have experience playing whatever online game you've played, and you go, yeah, it's fine in this area, but it's not for me. It's totally fine. And that's one of the arguments for Andromeda was the gameplay was good. The combat was good in certain flavors, not in every flavor, not in every instance. It's something else entirely to tell a person that they're wrong for liking Tot. Great spell check, Wired. Fantastic editors you have, which didn't meet your personal expectations. No. I mean, what they're saying is correct in that this is how people might think or some assessment might be done, but that's not what's happening with Andromeda. Andromeda's gameplay as well as its visuals weren't that good. They were robust. You can do so many things in gameplay, which was unique to the story, which I will give it credit for because I was tied into the plot, which is also one of the problems with the plot. Sam, the AI in your brain, does everything. He's pretty much the main character, or it's the main character. You can now have the powers of a biotic and the skills of a soldier, and you can do anything on the battlefield, and it's like, all right, that's explained at least. And that gives the player this freedom to customize their rider character into just about anything. They can do anything. It's kind of like breaking the limits of what a Mass Effect experience for gameplay at least was all about. Certainly wasn't the same as playing as Commander Shepard. There wasn't as much emotion in the attacks, like the melee attacks. It did not look nowhere or anywhere near as exciting or involved or cinematic when Shepard would fight compared to when Ryder would fight. But that's just one element. Being a fan of something doesn't entitle you to dictate the course of its life forevermore. Yes, I agree. Being a fan is just being a fan. Being a critic, however, does entitle you because you are a critic. You have gone through the experience of knowing the lore, of knowing the games, like the Mass Effect franchise. It's a franchise. It's not some thing in a vacuum. Andromeda is not some offshoot. Hey, I'm Andromeda. I have nothing to do with the Mass Effect franchise. No, it's in the title. It's using the same lore. It's using the same universe as Mass Effect. So you have to expect something similar. Now, you could argue BioWare could have made a different genre of game, like an RTS. And you could say, okay, that is now a different genre of game, but it still has to use the lore. It still has to use the setting. It has to use up all the setups of the world that were created, all the world building, all the characters, all the aliens, all the setups. That is what we mean. But you have much more freedom to do your own RTS or adventure game or puzzle game or whatever BioWare wanted to do. We'd be like, okay, yeah, these are different characters, different scenario, different interface, different game, as opposed to different story. For those who didn't know or haven't played, Andromeda is set approximately 600 years after the conclusion of the original trilogy in a different galaxy for almost no reason. That was explained. It's just we got to go to a different galaxy because we've never been there before. when over 99% of the known galaxy is unknown to us in the Milky Way. But that was the premise. You're like, okay, I mean, that seems a little extreme. Can't we just go to a new sector we've never been to and explore? That'll take us forever, even though we have this amazing technology. But new galaxy. Okay, sure. Between the events of Mass Effect 2 and 3, a group of people left the Milky Way in cryostasis and made the centuries-long journey to Andromeda. So that's the setup. Of course, things went wrong, and now it's up to your character writer to help your struggling people find a way to survive, which would have been great if that was the actual story. Turns out all you're doing is just fighting some mysterious alien force who are after the same technology as you are to terraform planets. You don't actually do the terraforming. You have a magical alien device that does it for you, and you don't actually set up settlements. They don't do anything. There's nothing to set up. Like there's very little you're releasing people from stasis, and that gives you some bonuses here and there, but you're not actually doing any of the development. You're not setting up cities. Or it's not what you thought the game would. Even the premise of the game that we thought we were getting was not the game, which is not a good sign. Now, if the game itself, as I said, so our expectations aren't met of building a colony for humanity or for aliens or for whatever, wasn't there, well, what is there should be of certain quality anyway. So we wouldn't evaluate it on our expectations. We'd evaluate it for what it actually is. And what it is a pile of shit. It's not a terrible premise. Premises can be bad. Their executions can be great. It's not a big problem. Unless the premise itself is designed to be to be a failure. That is another problem entirely. I don't think Andromeda... in certain cases, yes, it was set up to be a failure, but that's because of what we saw from the marketing material. The various flaws and misunderstandings and over-the-top expectations like, oh my God, we have a whole galaxy to explore. No, we don't. We don't. We really don't. So we're not doing a micromanagement experience of RTSing, of setting up colonies like manually. We build the buildings and we produce things from those buildings, and those buildings go on to make other buildings or other units or other technologies and research. It's like none of that. None of that. It's just Mass Effect Light. You're exploring in your spaceship without the use of Mass Effect relays. It's a very small part of the galaxy. But for gamers clinging to the original saga, it was hard to forgive Andromeda for not being a sequel to Mass Effect 3. Everyone, it seemed, was still hung up on their X. Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. If you were hung up on Mass Effect 3, you have problems. And by hung up, I mean liking the story and what happened at the ending of Mass Effect 3. That was a catastrophe if ever I read an ending to a story. In fact, the biggest catastrophe of any ending to any story I've ever experienced. You would not be hung up by a nuclear bomb destroying everything. Maybe you'd be hung up on the suffering and pain you went through to experience that thing. But that's a negative element. That's not a positive. That's not being hung up on the example of on your ex. Your ex was so wonderful and so positive and so loving and yada yada. That's the opposite of being hung up in this regard. My ex, who tried to stab me at every opportunity, never loved me and hated me every time. That's not called being hung up on someone. So no. We're not hung up on Mass Effect 3 story. Following the release of Mass Effect Legendary Edition and on the heels of news that the next installment of the series might be a sequel to the original trilogy along with Andromeda, I decided to resist that ill-fated title. Turns out it's pretty fantastic. Yeah, if you just forget the pedigree and the history of where this game is coming from, it's great. Yeah, if you just think of this game in a vacuum, it's great. Wow, this vinegar tastes like fantastic wine I've never tasted before. It burns your throat, but that's part of the quality. It's like, no. Part of this, of course, is due to the fact BioWare has ironed out many of the game's early kinks. Again, this whole we're making early access games bullshit, or we can fix it on day one patches. That is not something to be impressed by. I don't care what the industry is like these days. And plus, it did not take one day one patch to fix. It took months to fix this game, and even then, it wasn't properly fixed. There are still bugs, to be sure, but the gameplay is enjoyable. So even then, even though they stopped working on Andromeda, there's still bugs. It's like, yep, it's a pile of crap. Voice cast is amazing. Natalie Dormer, who plays an ugly, unattractive, non-romanceable Asari. And Kumail, so the Indian fellow who plays Indian Solarian guy. It's like, whatever. There is voice talent. You know how much voice talent was in the original games? Quite a lot. Telling me there's two people whose talent is fine doesn't make up for what the game experience is. And putting an exclamation mark is like, oh my God, these two people. It's like, yes, and we had Mark Meir on one playthrough and Jennifer Hill on another, both extremely talented voice actors. What's your argument? Well, their voice talents are unique to their own. It's like, yes, they are. And in the previous games, we had dozens. We had Peter goddamn David. Not Peter David, sorry. Keith David. Not the writer, the actor. He makes everything better. Why didn't you get Keith David in there somehow? I don't know how. Maybe an AI. Go use science fiction. Make a clone of Keith David. I don't care. Well, you shouldn't compare it to the original. Yet the original is superior in every way. What kind of strange argument is this? And the crew you recruit over the course of the game are solid, from Jaal, who's part of an alien species, to if we went over to Vetra, a Turian mercenary who raised her sister. We've already mentioned how horrible these characters are. Let's not talk about Cora, whose fantastic haircut shows a lot of promise, but she turns out to be an Asari appropriation horror story. Is that a dig into Cora? Are you saying Cora's a good character because she has a freaking haircut? But she's not good because she has an appropriation horror story. Gee, I wonder what politics you're a part of, sir, or ma'am, or whatever Swapna, whatever gender Swapna is. An appropriation horror story. So you're saying Cora is a good character because she looks good with her haircut, but she's a bad character because she's an Asari appropriation horror story. Are you trying to sell me that Andromeda is good or bad? Which one is it? Because it sounds to me like you have mixed feelings, like the rest of us had. And to say a game is good because Cora has a haircut is frickin' retarded. If you didn't give the game a fair chance when you first played, it's worth revisiting. No, it's not. When you do, try to remember why Andromeda was reviled in the first place. Quality. Every element. Dialogue, gameplay, story, narration, world building, characters, characterization, you name it. GUI interface, everything was shit. It was long. The characters sucked. The villains sucked. The conflict sucked. You could argue the gameplay was somewhat fun, as a game should be, which is kind of like, did the food give you some nutrition? Yes, you won't die today. You won't starve today. It's like, okay, great. It was still overpriced crap. That's not why you go out to eat. Okay? It's not why you go out to buy a $60 AAA title when the quality doesn't add up. Was it objectively bad? Yes. Or was it just that not what some fans wanted? This is not some fans. This is the gaming community, if I dare say that word, as a whole. And by community, I mean the websites. I mean the reviewers. They were like, yeah, this game sucks. It has all these bugs. It's barely playable. The characters suck. The villain sucks. The dialogue wheel sucks. Your choices don't matter. which is one of the main points of a Mass Effect game, having your choices matter. What choice matters in Mass Effect Andromeda? Does anyone know? I don't recall. So yes, by every metric, by every criteria, by every standard, outside of being Mass Effect, this game is subpar. It is below mediocre. And patching it up just made it somewhat mediocre. Story is still the same, still shit. I'm not saying people need to shut up and like what they got, what they get, especially when that thing is generally crap. I do not blame people for being upset about Cyberpunk 2077, as long as their complaints weren't delivered in the form of harassment, abuse, blah, 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 death threats. But sometimes it's important to step back and evaluate whether something isn't just for you. All right, comparing it to Cyberpunk 2077 is a great example. Both games came out in a broken state. Both games still are not finished, and Andromeda will never be finished. It's still buggy as hell. It still looks like shit, reads like shit, plays like shit. Arguably, some of the gameplay is interesting and well done because it's so much of it. But holy crap, guys. Pay attention. There are standards of quality we have for the genre, for the franchise, for instances. And your assessment should be based on what a Mass Effect is, and that is the dialogue wheel. The dialogue wheel in Andromeda sucked. They tried to do something new, didn't do much. Wasn't worth your time. Not much drama. Is there any drama? Do you care for any of the characters? People like Drax a bit. Like, yeah, he's got some moments. Other than that, nothing memorable. In fact, everything that's memorable is hilariously bad. I should not have to quote some memes or some ridiculous scenarios. The random drunken NPC comes to mind. What the hell was that about? I have no idea. Let's just have a drunken person stumbling and standing in one spot, like in the middle of an alien world. Like, okay. Let's have two people shaking hands forever, but never actually touching each other's hands. They just sort of jiggle their hands. There's all kinds of ridiculous scenarios that make you laugh at how bad the quality of Andromeda was. Take a deep breath and let go of your preconceptions and try again. Yeah, take away your preconceptions of quality. No thank you, I'm a critic, I know what the hell I'm talking about. Or move on. No one is forcing you to play or care about this game. Then why are you talking about it? What a bizarre argument. This is just a thing. Move on with your life. There are other life experiences out there. Yes, you're right. And I'm still going to say Andromeda sucks. I have video evidence of Andromeda sucking. Story-wise, not just the glitches and the bugs. The actual story, the actual characters, the plot. It's garbage. Shit. And that's outside of Mass Effect. That's just storytelling in general. Literally no one is forcing you to play or care about this game. Literally no one, except for you who wrote this article to tell me to stop complaining about Mass Effect. Are you looking in the mirror yet, sir? Or Indian person? Like, are you not aware of the actual content of the thing you're trying to tell me? Stop complaining about Mass Effect Andromeda. Oh, but no one is forcing you to play or care about this game. Literally no one. You can play something you like instead. Yes, like anything else. That is how low quality Andromeda is. For a AAA title from BioWare. I must restore order. Ugh. Mass Effect Andromeda wasn't what I wanted when it came out. I certainly wasn't alone in that feeling. Oh, so you were also disappointed. But revisiting it now, it wasn't terrible. Yes, it was. How wasn't it terrible? Tell me your criteria for quality, sir or ma'am. Actually have an assessment. Don't just say, it wasn't so bad. Now that I look back at it, like, yes, it was. And I'm a little bit sad I didn't get to see more of Andromeda in other games and DLC. Maybe that'll come in Mass Effect 5. If not, I'll be disappointed. That's your whole argument? You have no examples. The only thing you have an example of is you like, where was it? There. You liked Vetra and Jaal. You liked Natalie Dormer and Kumail Nanjiani. And you dislike Cora's backstory of appropriation. If you guys know anything about Jaal and Vetra, Jaal is the only alien, one of the only aliens from Andromeda, and he's not that interesting. Vetra is one of the only female Turians we encounter in the story, or introduced female Turians after the Omega DLC in Mass Effect 3. Where's Mass Effect 2? And that was about it. She's a female Turian. She has a backstory of taking care of her sister. She can't cook human cuisine. That's her character. I'm sorry. A woman who can't cook steak is not a woman. Don't care. If you're an alien woman, it doesn't matter to me. You're worthless. Jaal, don't care. Not very interesting. Natalie Dormer, not interesting. Some NPC, don't care. Those are not reasons to like Andromeda. What this person could have done was argued about the gameplay. If maybe they actually played the goddamn game, they could talk about it. But apparently there's no mention of gameplay here. How robust it was, how many things you could do, how customizable characters were. Or not characters, no, they weren't customizable at all. It was only Ryder who was customizable. No mention of that. Nothing. Stop complaining about this bad game by not trying to explain why it's a good game. By not giving the argument of why it should exist in a vacuum and therefore evaluate as such a thing. As this phenomenon of nature that no one has ever experienced. It's a unique snowflake. You have to treat it special. You're like, okay. How? Give me a criteria. He doesn't give me a criteria. This guy's an idiot. Wired.com needs an editor. And I'm done. Thanks for listening. Have yourself a great day.